The airport terminal buzzed with the chaotic energy of early evening travelers. Wheels clattered across polished floors, and distant announcements echoed off the high ceilings. Among the crowd, a man moved briskly, dragging a single rolling suitcase behind him. At first glance, he seemed like any other passenger, absorbed in his own world, checking his watch and glancing toward the gate. But there was a secret trailing him, unnoticed by the passing crowd. A brown and white dog with soulful eyes, obediently following, leash in hand. The man paused, scanning the large electronic departure board. Gate C-17 blinked with urgency. Final boarding call. He hesitated for a fraction of a second, then tied the leash to a metal chair near the gate, giving the dog a tight pat on the head. "Wait here, boy. I'll be right back," he said, his voice unusually clipped, almost rehearsed. The dog wagged his tail once, a small, trusting flick, and settled neatly by the chair as if he understood exactly what was expected. Minutes ticked by. Travelers rushed past, rolling their suitcases and murmuring apologies as they brushed against the dog. He didn't flinch. He didn't bark. He only sat, ears erect, eyes locked on the jet bridge where his owner had disappeared. The final boarding announcement repeated over the loudspeakers. People hurried to the gate, anxious and frustrated, but the dog remained, a single, steady presence amid the frenzied chaos. Behind him, cleaning staff wheeled carts, glancing at the animal. "Does he belong to anyone?" a janitor muttered, kneeling to offer him a small bottle of water. The dog sniffed it politely, drank, and immediately returned to his vigil. He had a mission. He had a purpose. He waited, his nose twitching at the faint scent of jet fuel and jetway carpeting, his gaze never straying from the corridor. Some passengers noticed, paused, and whispered to each other. A mother tugged her small child closer, pointing. "Look at the dog," she said. "He's waiting for someone." The child's eyes widened. "Where's his person?" she asked. Nobody had an answer. The man was gone. Inside the terminal, the roar of the departing flight faded into the distance. Gate agents swept the area, stacking chairs, rolling carts, cleaning up after the rush. But the dog remained, tail thumping once every now and then, eyes unwavering. It was almost ritualistic, the way he shifted from sitting to standing and back, always watching the empty jet bridge as if it would magically produce the man he loved. By the time the terminal's lights dimmed for the night, the dog had become a fixture. Security cameras caught him in every frame, sitting, waiting, refusing to be coaxed away. Overnight cleaners left bowls of water and scraps of food, which he nibbled but never truly ate. The dog's loyalty was unshakable. Nothing mattered except the promise that had been made when the leash had been tied to that chair. News of the dog's vigil began to spread. A terminal employee posted a photo on a local social media page, a single dog staring toward the gate, ears erect, eyes pleading. Comments poured in, "Poor dog, someone should help him. This breaks my heart. I hope his owner comes back." But no one knew the full story. No one realized that this wasn't mere obedience or hunger-driven survival. This was devotion, pure and untainted. The night passed slowly. The janitor's mop swished over the tiles, echoing in the vast emptiness of the terminal. The air conditioning hummed, creating a low drone, and the dog's tail thumped in perfect time with the rhythm. He lay down briefly, ears twitching at every footstep, then sprang upright, eyes fixed on gate C-17. Hours blurred. The terminal emptied. Only the dog remained, a lone sentinel against an indifferent world. Meanwhile, somewhere in the sky, the man who had tied the leash to the chair reclined in his airplane seat, scrolling through his phone, oblivious to the scene he had left behind. He sipped a drink, legs crossed, pretending the act of abandoning the dog never happened. Yet across town, in the stark fluorescent lights of the airport terminal, a brown and white dog refused to leave. He didn't chase other travelers, didn't seek comfort. His world had shrunk to a single point. The empty gate, the final boarding call, the man who would, or wouldn't, return. By dawn, a few early travelers noticed him. He was still there, collar dusty, fur slightly ruffled from the night. An airline employee approached with cautious concern. "Sir, you can't stay here," he said gently. The dog tilted his head, eyes locking on the jet bridge, and let out a soft, almost sorrowful whine. He wouldn't move. He couldn't move. Every instinct screamed to stay. The employee stepped back, unsure what to do. The terminal cameras had recorded every second. The internet had not yet noticed, but it wouldn't take long. Something about the image, a dog alone at a gate, waiting, was heartbreaking and magnetic all at once. And as the first planes of the morning roared overhead, the dog's ears perked at the distant sound of a suitcase rolling across the tile, thinking, hopping, this time it would be him. For the dog, time no longer mattered. Hunger, fatigue, even the chill of the morning air was irrelevant. All that existed was Gate C-17 and the promise he believed in. The suspense hung heavy in the air. Would the man ever come back, or would the dog's loyalty be forever in vain? The terminal was quiet again, save for the rhythmic tap of his paws. The screen blinked, the departure board shifted, and travelers passed by, oblivious. But he remained unwavering. And in that quiet, lonely vigilance, the dog's devotion whispered a question to everyone who saw him. How far would you go for someone who abandoned you as evening descended? The terminal lights dimmed to a soft, amber glow, casting long shadows over the polished tiles. The cleaning staff had finished their rounds, leaving behind the faint scent of disinfectant and the occasional crumpled boarding pass. Travelers had vanished into taxis, rideshares, and distant flights, leaving the brown and white dog alone. Yet he did not move from the spot where the man had abandoned him, his paws planted firmly, his gaze fixed on Gate C-17. His tail thumped softly, a lonely heartbeat in a cavernous, empty terminal. A janitor, tall and thin, approached cautiously. He crouched low, voice gentle. "Hey there, buddy, you okay?" The dog lifted his head, sniffed the air, then returned to staring at the jet bridge. He drank from the bottle of water the janitor offered, but did not allow the hand to linger near his fur. There was no aggression, only the quiet, unwavering message: I am waiting, I am loyal, and I will not leave. Security cameras captured every movement. From above, the dog looked smaller than he truly was, dwarfed by the terminal's vastness. Footsteps echoed as guards passed by, peering down at the animal. One of them, Officer Ramirez, knelt and spoke softly. "You can't stay here all night, little guy." But the dog merely whined, a low, aching sound that seemed to carry years of longing, and shifted slightly closer to the empty chair where the leash had been tied. It was as if the dog understood that the chair was the last tangible connection to the man who had abandoned him. Hours passed. The terminal became nearly silent except for the hum of air conditioning and distant rolling trolleys from the maintenance crew. The dog's body stiffened, every muscle tense, but he refused to lie down. His eyes never wavered from Gate C-17. Every sound, every echoing footstep, every distant boarding announcement made his ears twitch. It was a vigil of endurance, a demonstration of loyalty few humans could comprehend. At 11:43 p.m., a cleaning cart rattled past. The dog barely flinched. A security officer shone a flashlight briefly across his coat. The dog's eyes glimmered in the beam, unwavering, waiting. Outside, the wind howled against the terminal's glass walls. Inside, only one heartbeat filled the space. A dog's heart, loyal and anxious, tied to hope that might never return. Meanwhile, a small group of travelers returning from delayed flights noticed him. A woman with a camera phone whispered, "Look, he's still there. All night." Others stopped, snapping photos. Some tried calling animal control, others debated coaxing him away. But the dog's gaze never strayed from the gate. He did not beg. He did not chase. He did not whine loudly. He waited silently, patiently, and heartbreakingly, as if he were holding on to the invisible promise that the man would return. By midnight, airport staff had left food and water, but the dog had little interest in them. Hunger tugged at his stomach, but devotion tugged stronger at his heart. He paced in a small circle, then returned to his post. His paws scuffed lightly against the tile, and the faint scent of his own fur mingled with the sterile air of the terminal. Some passengers lingered, staring. Their whispers filled the empty terminal. Who would leave a dog here? one said, voice trembling. "Look at him, he's waiting for someone," another replied. Cameras clicked and the photos began appearing online. "Airport dog waits for owner who never returned." People commented in disbelief, sorrow, and outrage. Few could understand the depth of the loyalty they were witnessing. The dog's ears twitched at every announcement: delayed flights, gate changes, cleaning notifications. His world had contracted to a single focus. Gate C-17, nothing else mattered. The janitor returned periodically to check on him. "Poor guy," he muttered. "Doesn't even know he's been abandoned, doesn't give up." The dog's eyes, deep and expressive, seemed to plead silently, "I am here. I am waiting. He will come back." As the night deepened, a faint chill crept through the terminal. The dog's fur had begun to ruffle from the cold air. He shifted from sitting to standing, then back again, packing in quiet agony. His muzzle rested briefly against the empty metal chair where the leash had been tied. The scent of the man lingered faintly, and he inhaled sharply, a subtle flicker of hope passing through his gaze. But no footsteps appeared, no familiar figure returned. Animal control finally arrived around 2 a.m., led by a young woman named Elise. She approached slowly, kneeling, hands outstretched with a calm, soothing voice. "Hey, pup, we're going to take care of you. Come on, let's get you somewhere warm." The dog tilted his head, ears stiff. He sniffed at her, then glanced back at the empty gate. His whine was soft, almost mournful, a sound heavy with history, trust, and expectation. He refused to follow, instead pressing his paws against the tiles, eyes glued to the space where the man had vanished. Elise's heart clenched. He's waiting," she whispered to her partner. "He's not lost, he's waiting for someone." They stepped back, unsure what to do. The dog refused to eat, refused to rest, refused to leave his post. He was trapped between loyalty and survival, the invisible tether of hope holding him in place. Outside, the terminal lay in silence, lights dimmed. The janitor returned one last time before clocking out. He crouched beside the dog. "Don't worry, buddy. Someone will find you. Someone will help you." The dog pressed his head against the chair, eyes wide and mournful. He did not understand words. He only understood the absence of the man, the betrayal of leaving, and the hope that he might still return. Across the city, somewhere far above the clouds, the man sat in a reclining seat on the plane, oblivious. He scrolled through his phone, occasionally glancing at the window, never thinking of the dog sitting alone in the terminal, waiting. He had abandoned more than a pet. He had abandoned a soul that loved him unconditionally. As the first faint streaks of dawn illuminated the glass walls, the dog remained vigilant. His coat, dusted with crumbs and the faint grime of the terminal floor, glistened in the morning light. Passengers entering for early flights paused to see him. Some cried silently, some shook their heads in disbelief. The dog barely noticed. He only knew the man had gone, and yet in his heart he remained steadfast, clinging to the belief that he would return. And then, as if the universe wanted to test the depth of his devotion, a distant sound echoed through the terminal, the faint roll of a suitcase. The dog froze, ears twitching, tail stiff. He rose on all fours, eyes wide, scanning the crowd. A figure appeared in the distance, moving toward him, but it was not the man. It was a stranger, kneeling, cooing, offering water, trying to coax him away. The dog let out a low, sorrowful whine, eyes darting toward the empty gate, and pressed his paws harder against the tile. His chest rose and fell rapidly. He was tired, hungry, and cold, but he would not abandon his post. Not for food, not for warmth, not for any stranger. In that moment, the terminal held its breath. Who was he waiting for? Would his loyalty be rewarded, or would the man never return? For the dog, there was only one truth. Gate C-17 was where he belonged, and he would wait there, no matter what. The suspense lingered, heavy and palpable like the calm before a storm. And in the quiet corners of the terminal, the story of the dog who refused to give up began to take root in the hearts of all who witnessed it. By the morning light, the terminal was alive with the rush of early commuters. But there, near Gate C-17, the dog remained. Brown and white fur dusted with grime, paws slightly worn from hours of packing, eyes wide and unwavering. He sat like a sentinel guarding a sacred post. Travelers paused, cameras raised, some murmuring softly, others whispering to friends. "That dog, he's still here." Someone posted a photo to social media. "Dog waiting at airport for owner who abandoned him. Please help." Within minutes, the post spread like wildfire. Comments poured in, hundreds at first, then thousands. Heartbreaking. "This is loyalty beyond comprehension. Someone find this dog, don't let him suffer alone." Strangers offered to fly to the airport, bring food, or adopt him, but the dog's focus never wavered from the gate. An airline flight attendant, passing by on her way to an early shift, knelt beside him. "Hey buddy, it's okay," she murmured. She offered gentle scratches behind the ears. The dog leaned slightly into her touch but quickly looked back toward gate C-17, ears perked and tail stiff. It was not mistrust. It was devotion, pure and unyielding. The terminal seemed to pulse around him, people flowing past, luggage rolling, announcements echoing. But nothing could pull him away from the empty corridor where the man had vanished. Airport staff began to notice. Security officers exchanged glances, unsure how to handle a dog that refused to leave. Animal control was called in, not to take the dog away but to ensure his safety. When the officers approached with leashes, the dog let out a soft, heart-wrenching whine, pressed his paws against the floor, and refused to move. He had already chosen. He belonged at gate C-17. The news spread beyond the terminal. Local media picked up the story. "Airport dog waits hours for absent owner." The first segment aired on the evening news, showing footage of the dog sitting patiently as travelers hurried past, juxtaposed against images of crowded departure gates and bustling terminals. Viewers were captivated. Some cried, some called the station asking how they could help, some shared the story to their networks. In the comments, people debated fiercely. How could anyone leave a dog like that? Animals are loyal beyond what most humans can even understand. Inside the terminal, the dog was oblivious to his newfound fame. His gaze never wavered, scanning the corridor like a hawk. A janitor brought fresh water and some scraps of leftover food. He sniffed them politely, then returned to his vigil. Hunger, exhaustion, and cold were nothing compared to the pull of the gate, the invisible tether of loyalty and hope that bound him to the absent man. The first real act of kindness came from a young traveler named Mia who had been stranded by a delayed flight. She noticed the dog sitting, quietly waiting, and crouched beside him. "You're so brave," she whispered. "He'll come back, I promise." She didn't fully understand the depth of his loyalty. She didn't know that the dog had already endured hours, maybe even days, of silent abandonment. But she stayed quietly, offering water and gentle scratches. The dog accepted her presence, leaning slightly into her hand, but every muscle was tense, every gaze fixed on the empty corridor. By mid-morning, the terminal had become a stage. Travelers stopped to take pictures and videos. A barista at a nearby cafe peeked over the counter, whispering to her coworkers. "He's still here, sitting there, waiting. Can you believe it?" Screens lit up as live streams started capturing his vigil, viewers tuning in from across the country. The dog became an unlikely celebrity overnight, a symbol of loyalty, heartbreak, and hope all in one small, steadfast body. Despite the attention, the dog did not seek comfort. Volunteers from animal control tried to coax him away, offering treats and soft blankets. He sniffed politely, then returned to his post. One officer whispered to another, "He's not lost. He's waiting, and I think he knows exactly what he's waiting for." His eyes remained fixed on the jet bridge where the man had disappeared, as if time itself had bent to his devotion. The hours dragged. Plane after plane departed, passengers rushing past, but the dog didn't budge. His coat became dusty, matted in places from lying on the terminal tiles, but he refused to leave. He had survived the night, and now the daylight brought new witnesses and new hope, but no reunion. Each passing hour thickened the suspense, and people began to hold their breath, watching his silent vigil, waiting for a miracle that might never come. The man himself, somewhere on a flight hundreds of miles away, had no idea the storm his abandonment had unleashed. Social media posts flooded with emotional pleas, hashtags like Gate C17 dog and loyalty beyond words trending within hours. People speculated endlessly. Will his owner come back? What kind of person abandons a dog like that? The story was no longer just about a dog. It had become a mirror reflecting humanity's best and worst instincts, devotion, empathy, and betrayal, all in one quiet, loyal animal. By evening, the terminal was packed with onlookers. Airport staff had set up a temporary cordon to give the dog some space, but everyone was whispering, taking pictures, and recording videos. Even children craned their necks to see him. The air was thick with emotion, sorrow, admiration, disbelief. And through it all, the dog remained a calm, unwavering figure, paws planted firmly on the ground, eyes locked on the gate as if sensing that the man might appear at any moment. Then came a moment that sent chills through everyone present. A distant sound echoed, the faint click of rolling suitcases, a murmured conversation. The dog froze, ears twitching. He rose slowly, tail stiff, eyes wide. For a heartbeat, the terminal fell silent as if holding its breath. Passengers whispered anxiously, cameras pointed, hearts racing. Could it be him? Could the man finally be returning? It was just another traveler passing by, oblivious. But the dog didn't falter. He pressed closer to the gate, muscles coiled, eyes searching the corridor for that familiar figure who might never appear. And in that silent moment, the gravity of his loyalty became painfully clear. He had been abandoned, left behind, yet he remained, unwavering, refusing comfort, refusing distraction, refusing to give up hope. Social media posts continued to explode. News outlets called the airport for updates. Volunteers contacted the terminal offering support. But no human presence could replace the one the dog was waiting for. And as night approached again, the brown and white dog sat in the dimming lights, coat dusted with terminal dust, ears alert, tail twitching softly, still waiting, still believing, still loyal. The suspense lingered. Would the man ever return? Or was the dog's vigil destined to be a heartbreaking, lonely testament to loyalty and hope? The world watched, hearts clenched, and the dog waited, oblivious to the attention, focused only on Gate C17 and the promise he believed had been made. In the quiet corners of the terminal, the story of the dog became legend in real time. People began to ask themselves, how far would you go for someone who abandoned you? And in the stillness, the dog answered, not with words but with unwavering presence, a silent act of devotion that would haunt every witness for days to come. By the next morning, the brown and white dog had become the unofficial guardian of Gate C17. Travelers and airport staff alike had grown accustomed to his presence, whispering his story to each other, sharing photos and marveling at his unwavering loyalty. Animal control had returned, carefully coaxing him into a transport crate, but the dog's resistance was palpable. His eyes darted toward the gate, ears stiff, tail brushing the floor in quiet agitation. He would not leave his post, not for comfort, not for warmth, not for strangers who wanted to save him. Finally, after delicate negotiations, the airport staff transferred the dog to a local animal shelter. The volunteers carried him into a small, brightly lit kennel, a stark contrast to the vast, echoing terminal he had guarded for so long. At first, he refused to eat or drink. The soft blankets, the clean water bowls, and the new toys meant nothing. He paced in small circles, paws scraping against the concrete floor, ears flicking at every sound of footsteps or door slamming. The shelter staff quickly realized this wasn't a dog with typical needs. He wasn't lost. He wasn't confused. He was waiting. Every movement, every glance at the door, every restless turn in his small space suggested a single truth. He was expecting someone, and not just anyone. He was waiting for the man who had abandoned him. Volunteer Sarah Jenkins, who had been with the shelter for 5 years, watched him with a mixture of awe and sorrow. "I've seen loyal dogs before," she murmured, "but never like this. He's holding on to hope for someone who may never return." She crouched down, speaking softly, but the dog's gaze remained locked on the door. Every visitor who approached met the same response: polite sniffing, soft whines, then back to staring at the exit. The staff began keeping notes. At exactly 3:40 p.m., the time the man's flight had departed, he would sit upright, muscles tense, ears alert, staring at the door. No distractions, no food, no attention could pull him from that ritual. It became known among volunteers as the shelter clock, a silent testimony to his loyalty and determination. Meanwhile, the story of the airport dog continued to spread online. Posts and videos amassed thousands of shares. Strangers from across the country expressed outrage, concern, and heartbreak. Some offered to adopt him immediately. Others argued fiercely over who had the right to care for him. The dog, however, ignored all of it. He had only one world, the world beyond the shelter door, the one where the man might or might never come back. 3 days after his arrival at the shelter, a phone call shattered the fragile calm. Sarah answered, expecting a routine inquiry. Instead, a man's shaky voice filled the line. I heard you have a dog, brown and white, smallish. Does he belong to anyone?" Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She quickly confirmed details. The man hesitated, then continued, I left him at the airport. I didn't know what else to do. I panicked. I couldn't pay the fees. I didn't know what to do, and I just left. Her hand froze over the phone. Are you coming back for him? She asked quietly. The line went silent. Seconds dragged into a heavy, agonizing pause. Then the man whispered almost inaudibly, I don't know if I can. I want to, but I don't know. He hung up. The shelter volunteers exchanged glances. They had heard stories before, owners abandoning pets, claiming they wanted them back later. But this was different. The dog had endured abandonment already, and now the man's uncertainty threatened to crush the fragile hope that had sustained him for days. Inside the kennel, the dog's head tilted toward the door as if he had heard the man's voice. His ears twitched, and his tail gave a faint, tentative wag. Could it be? Did he sense that the man had reached out, even in uncertainty? He pressed his paws against the floor, muscles taut, eyes wide, waiting for a moment that might never come. Over the following hours, the shelter staff tried everything to distract him. Volunteers brought in toys, took him for short walks, and even let him interact with other dogs. But he returned every time to the door of the kennel, packing, sitting, standing, never letting his vigilance falter. The shelter clock continued, ticking precisely at 3:40 p.m., his ritual unbroken. Public fascination grew. People from around the country offered to help cover fees, fly him to new homes, and even provide temporary care. But the shelter understood. This was not about rescue. This was about loyalty, devotion, and the possibility of reconciliation. They knew that forcing the dog into a new environment would break something far deeper than routine or comfort. It would shatter the bond he believed in, the bond that tied him to gate C-17 and to the man who had abandoned him. Then 3 days later, another phone call arrived, this time from the airline itself. A representative explained that a man had called, asking about a brown and white dog, describing him in detail and asking if the dog had been found. The airline staff seemed cautious, almost doubtful of the story. But the shelter director, Sarah, felt a sudden, sharp pang of hope. The man had reached out, and that was all the dog needed to cling to. Later that evening, as the dog lay briefly on the shelter floor, a volunteer leaned close. "Someone's trying to find you," she whispered. The dog lifted his head, ears flicking toward the door, tail brushing the floor lightly, muscles tense. For the first time in days, his eyes shone with something more than loyalty. They held hope. A tiny flicker, but enough to keep him anchored, to remind everyone watching that miracles could happen, even after betrayal. The shelter clock ticked again at 3:40 p.m. The dog rose, sniffed the air, and stared intently at the door. Every sound beyond the walls of the shelter, the rumble of cars, the distant barking of other dogs, the footsteps of humans, was meaningless. There was only one presence that mattered, and the suspense hung heavy in the air. Would that presence appear finally, or would the dog's devotion remain unfulfilled? Outside the kennel, staff whispered, sharing updates with each other, watching the dog's every movement. Cameras from social media continued to stream live feeds, showing viewers the quiet drama unfolding in real time. People left comments like, "I can't watch this and not cry," and that dog deserves the world. Yet, despite the fame, the dog's world was still painfully small, defined by a single door, a single corridor, and a single hope. The suspense escalated further when the airline confirmed the man had called, but no arrival time had been set. Volunteers feared he might not come at all. And yet, the dog's eyes remained wide, unwavering, reflecting a combination of confusion, hope, and an unshakable belief in loyalty. As night fell again, the brown and white dog lay near the door, chin resting on his paws, eyes scanning the hallway for the faintest sound of familiar footsteps. He had endured nights in the airport and days in the shelter, all for one hope, that the man would return. His devotion was absolute, unwavering, a testament to a bond far deeper than abandonment, beyond betrayal, and more powerful than any obstacle the world could throw in his way. And as the shelter lights dimmed, volunteers left with heavy hearts, knowing the dog would wait through the night, just as he had waited at the airport, his eyes fixed, body tense, tail twitching softly. A living reminder that true loyalty could not be measured, only witnessed. The suspense lingered like a shadow across the room. Would the man keep his promise? Would the dog's years of waiting finally be rewarded, or would his devotion remain a quiet tragedy for the world to watch? In the kennel, the dog lifted his head once more, ears alert, tail flicking faintly. Somewhere beyond the door, a voice might soon call his name. Somewhere beyond the walls, a choice awaited. And he would wait, always. The brown and white dog lay near the shelter door, eyes wide, ears flicking at every sound. The distant hum of traffic and the muffled voices of volunteers echoed faintly through the walls. He had been waiting for days, enduring the cold concrete floor, the hum of fluorescent lights, and the constant barrage of strangers. Yet, despite every distraction, his focus remained unwavering. His world was narrow, confined to the possibility that the man who had abandoned him might one day return. The phone rang sharply in the shelter office, startling the volunteers. Sarah Jenkins, weary from hours of checking on the dog and documenting his behaviors, picked it up. "Shelter, this is Sarah," she answered. A man's voice, trembling and hesitant, came through the line. "Hello, I heard you found a dog, brown and white, small to medium. Does he belong to someone?" Sarah froze. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. She had been expecting calls, inquiries, perhaps even adoption offers, but there was something in this voice, an unsteady, anxious tone, that resonated with the story she had been following so closely. "Yes," she said carefully, keeping her voice calm. "He's here. Are you his owner?" A long pause followed. Then the man's voice, cracking slightly, admitted the truth. I left him at the airport. I didn't know what else to do. I panicked. I couldn't afford the fees. His words caught in his throat. Sarah waited, letting the silence stretch. Finally, he continued, voice low and urgent. I want to see him. I want him back. I didn't know how to handle it, and I miss him." His confession hung in the air like fragile glass, trembling, fragile, dangerous. Sarah's fingers tightened around the phone. "Are you coming here?" she asked softly. Another pause. This time it was heavier, almost unbearable. I don't know if I can," he admitted. I want to, but I don't know. Can he even forgive me?" His words were desperate, raw with emotion. In the kennel, the dog's ears pricked. The volunteers exchanged anxious glances. The dog rose slowly to his paws, tail stiff, muscles tense. His nose twitched. He had heard the sound of this voice before, not in the shelter, but in echoes of memory from the terminal. Could it be? Could it finally be him? Could this trembling voice belong to the one he had waited for through nights, through fear, through abandonment? Sarah's voice softened. "He's here, he's safe, but he's been waiting, and he won't just jump at anyone. He's loyal more than most people could ever understand." The man swallowed audibly, voice breaking. I understand, I can't lose him." The dog's tail gave a faint flick, a tentative motion that suggested recognition, understanding, and hope. His brown eyes shimmered in the dim light of the kennel. He had endured so much, and yet the sound of the man's voice sparked something deep inside, a flicker of belief that the vigil might finally be rewarded. Sarah gave instructions. "If you're serious, come as soon as you can. We can arrange everything here, but he's waiting for you. He's not distracted by anyone else. He knows who he's waiting for." Another pause on the line. Then quietly the man whispered, "I'll be there. I promise. I'll do whatever it takes." The phone went quiet. Sarah hung up, then turned to the volunteers. "He's coming," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "He's coming, but we don't know how the dog will react. Be ready." The dog, sensing a shift in the air, pressed his paws against the floor. He didn't know exactly what had changed. He only knew the energy in the room had shifted, the vibrations of hope and tension threading through the air. He lowered his head briefly, then rose again, ears erect, eyes sharp. His loyalty had been tested. Now perhaps it would be rewarded, or perhaps it would be broken once more. Hours passed. Volunteers kept the kennel quiet, giving the dog space. His ears flicked at every sound of the outside world, cars, voices, distant barks, but none of them were the voice that had stirred his hope. His muscles coiled and relaxed in rhythm with the shelter clock, waiting for the final moment that might change everything. Outside the kennel, the world watched. Social media had caught wind of the man's call. Comments exploded. "He's finally coming. Please don't disappoint him. I hope this reunion happens safely." Fans of the dog's story from across the country waited anxiously, eyes glued to live streams, hearts clenched with collective anticipation. And then, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the shelter in shades of gold and violet, the first sound came, a tentative, hurried footstep on the cement walkway outside. The dog froze, nostrils flaring, tail stiff, ears upright. The volunteers held their breath, watching him tense in anticipation. Every instinct told him this could be the moment. The voice had promised arrival. The steps echoed a reality he had almost dared not hope for. A shadow appeared through the glass doors of the shelter. The man was there, hands trembling, eyes wide, voice catching as he called softly, "Buddy, it's me. I'm here. I'm so sorry." The dog's tail twitched violently, body trembling in excitement and uncertainty. For days he had held his vigil, endured betrayal, and survived alone, waiting for this exact moment. Now it had arrived. His paws scrabbled against the concrete, ears forward, eyes shining with recognition. He let out a low whine that carried through the shelter, filled with longing, relief, and the raw intensity of devotion tested to its limits. The man knelt slowly, extending his hands. "I'll never leave you again. I swear," he whispered, tears streaking down his cheeks. The dog stepped cautiously forward, then launched himself into the man's arms, pressing, licking, trembling, overwhelming both with the magnitude of loyalty that had endured nights and days, airport terminals, and abandoned hopes. Volunteers and staff watched silently, some with tears streaming down their faces. The reunion was more than a dog meeting his owner. It was a testament to enduring hope, to forgiveness, and to the depth of devotion that exists in the bond between humans and animals. But even in this moment of emotional triumph, tension lingered. The shelter clock had stopped, but the legal realities loomed. The man's abandonment had been documented, and the shelter had protocols to follow. Would he truly be allowed to take the dog home? Would the loyal animal forgive fully? And what did this moment mean for the volunteers who had fought to protect him during the uncertainty of his vigil? As the man and dog clung to each other, the sun set fully, casting long shadows in the shelter, the tension heavy but slightly eased by the palpable love between them. Outside, social media exploded with clips of the reunion. Millions watched, mesmerized, hearts pounding, tears streaming. The story had captured more than the imagination of the public. It had struck a nerve, showing humanity at its most vulnerable, yet capable of redemption through loyalty. The suspense for the viewers, however, was not yet fully resolved. The dog had waited for days, the man had returned, but the questions remained. Could the bond withstand the trauma of abandonment? Could the man truly honor the loyalty that had been tested so fiercely? The story was far from over, and everyone watching in the shelter and across the country held their breath, waiting for the next chapter of this extraordinary reunion. And through it all, the dog pressed closer, chest trembling against the man's, eyes wide, ears alert, still attuned to every subtle movement, every word. The vigil was over, but the true test of loyalty and forgiveness was only beginning. The suspense lingered like the faint smell of jet fuel still clinging to his fur. Would his loyalty be rewarded for a lifetime, or would the shadow of abandonment linger despite this reunion? The day dawned cold and crisp, the kind of winter morning that makes the world feel sharper, edges more pronounced. Snow clung lightly to the sidewalks, and a faint frost coated the shelter's windows. Inside, the brown and white dog lay quietly near the door, muscles coiled, ears twitching at every sound outside. He had been waiting, as always, for the familiar voice that had promised return. The hours had passed slowly, but he had endured. He had waited for days. Now the day had finally arrived. The man's arrival was orchestrated with precision. After the previous day's phone call, a local veteran, moved by the story and determined to help, had quietly purchased a plane ticket for the man. The goal was simple: reunite him with the dog in the same place where loyalty had first been tested, the airport. Volunteers coordinated carefully with the shelter and airline staff, ensuring the dog's safety during transport and minimizing stress. The excitement was palpable, and tension threaded through every action. When the van pulled up to the shelter, the dog perked instantly, tail stiff, ears forward. Volunteers gently guided him into a crate, speaking softly, stroking his coat, trying to reassure him. But the dog's eyes remained sharp, scanning the surroundings, nostrils flaring at the faint scent of the familiar corridor. His gaze remained fixed on the road ahead, on the promise that lay beyond the walls of the shelter. Inside the van, the dog pressed against the crate, nose sniffing the air, muscles tense. Every bump of the road made his paws shift, tail twitch, ears flick, but he never stopped staring ahead. He had endured abandonment, cold nights, strange hands, and unfamiliar spaces, and yet his loyalty had never wavered. He was patient. He was steadfast. He was a creature of devotion forged through loss and hope alike. The airport loomed in the distance, terminal windows reflecting the pale winter sunlight. Volunteers carried the crate into a quiet section near Gate C-17, now cordoned off for the reunion. Staff had cleared a small path, anticipating the moment. Cameras were set, live streams ready, and social media followers were already buzzing, waiting for the first glimpse of the dog's vigil turned into reunion. The crate opened. The dog stepped out cautiously, tail low but ears erect. His eyes scanned the corridor, nostrils flaring, muscles coiled for movement. Every instinct screamed familiarity, anticipation, and hope. The world around him, lights, staff, strangers, cameras, mattered little. There was only one presence he sought, one moment that could undo days of anxiety and reaffirm the loyalty that had defined him. And then he saw him. Through the glass doors of the terminal, the man appeared. Thin, anxious, eyes red-rimmed, moving slowly toward the gate as if every step required effort. His suitcase rolled behind him, but he barely noticed it, barely noticed the commotion. His eyes were fixed on a small, brown and white figure at the far end of the corridor. He had arrived at last. The dog froze for a heartbeat, muscles coiled, ears upright, tail brushing the floor in rapid, anxious movements. He had waded through abandonment, through despair, through strangers, and now the moment was here. His chest rose and fell rapidly, eyes shimmering with recognition. Every instinct told him this was the man who had walked away, but now he was returning. The man dropped to his knees, arms outstretched, voice trembling as he whispered, "Buddy, it's me. I'm here. I'm so sorry." The dog's tail whipped back and forth violently. His body trembled, paws scrabbling against the floor as if the last days of waiting had been compressed into one explosive motion. He leapt forward, crashing into the man's arms with desperate joy, licking and nuzzling, whining and shaking. The reunion was raw, chaotic, overwhelming. Volunteers and staff gasped, some crying openly, others whispering prayers of relief and astonishment. But the emotional tension was far from over. The shelter director stepped forward, holding official paperwork in her hands. "We need to finalize the adoption and ownership documents," she said softly. "His abandonment has been recorded and we have to make sure everything is legal. Otherwise, we can't release him." The man's hands shook as he took the papers, eyes locked on the dog who pressed against him without hesitation, chest heaving, fur damp with the intensity of emotion. He nodded quickly, scribbling his signature with urgency and relief, tears streaking down his cheeks. "I'll do anything," he whispered. "I'll make this right, I swear it." For the dog, the paperwork barely mattered. He had waited. He had hoped. And now, as the man's scent enveloped him, as the hands that had abandoned him now held him close, he finally allowed himself a moment of release. His tail thumped furiously against the floor, paws dug into the terminal tile, and eyes shone with the intensity of a bond reaffirmed. Airline staff, volunteers, and live stream viewers held their breath, witnessing a moment that felt larger than life. A reunion that transcended simple explanation, a testament to loyalty, forgiveness, and the enduring strength of love. The man whispered apologies over and over, his face buried in the dog's fur, promising that he would never leave again. Yet even in the triumph of this reunion, the tension lingered. The man had returned, but could he truly honor the devotion that had been tested so fiercely? Could he prove worthy of the loyalty that had carried the dog through days of waiting and nights of uncertainty? And for the volunteers, the public, and the live stream audience, the question hung in the air. Could loyalty, once abandoned, be fully restored? The dog, however, needed no words. He pressed closer, nose against the man's chest, ears alert, eyes gleaming with recognition and cautious joy. He had endured abandonment, patience, and countless hours of uncertainty. Now, in this moment, he had his reward, but the subtle question remained. Would this reunion last, or would history repeat itself? Outside, the first snowflakes of the day began to fall lightly, dusting the airport in fragile white. Cameras captured every movement, paws scrambling, tail thumping, the man's tears falling freely, volunteers cheering softly. Social media exploded with excitement. "He's back. The loyal dog has been reunited. True love exists. Look at this." Millions watched in awe, captivated by the intensity, devotion, and raw emotion of the scene. And yet for the dog, the world remained quiet except for one focus. The man he had waited for, the hands that had once left him behind now holding him tightly. His loyalty had been tested, patience stretched to its limits, but the bond had endured. The suspense, the fear, the uncertainty, all of it melted into a single moment of connection, raw and profound. The volunteers stepped back, giving them space. Airport staff whispered among themselves, moved to tears. And as the man and dog clung to each other, the question hung quietly but powerfully. Could this bond, tested so deeply, survive the reality of life beyond this terminal? For the first time in days, the dog allowed himself to relax just slightly. He had endured abandonment, the cold, hunger, strangers, and waiting. Now he had a choice, to trust again, fully and without hesitation. And he did. He pressed closer, tail wagging gently, chest rising and falling against the man's heart, eyes shining with the unwavering loyalty that had brought him through the storm. The suspense remained for the audience, though. The man had returned, but could the promises hold? Could he truly honor the loyalty that had endured trials and time? For everyone watching, from the shelter to millions online, the answer remained uncertain, just like the fragile snowflakes drifting silently over the terminal. Yet in that moment, the reunion was nothing short of miraculous. Two souls, separated by fear and abandonment, had found each other again, and the world paused to witness the quiet, unyielding power of loyalty, devotion, and forgiveness. The airport was quiet once more, the evening light casting long, golden streaks across the polished terminal floor. The brown and white dog sat close to the man, head resting gently against his chest, but his body remained taut, tail flicking in cautious anticipation. The reunion had occurred, yes, but trust once broken could not be restored instantly. Every passerby, every sound, Every flicker of movement reminded him of the hours, the nights, the abandonment he had endured. The man, eyes red and weary from tears, knelt beside him, stroking the dog's fur with care. "I'm never leaving you again," he whispered. His voice wavered and the dog tilted his head slightly, sniffing, ears flicking. Loyalty, the dog understood, was earned over time, reinforced in moments of reliability. And though he had waited for days, his trust was still fragile, like thin ice over a winter pond. Volunteers and airport staff had cleared the gate for a private reunion, but the spectacle had already attracted onlookers. Cameras, phones, and live streams were poised to capture every subtle movement. Millions across social media had followed the story: his vigil at Gate C-17, the man's initial abandonment, the shelter's careful protection, and now this reunion. The public collectively held its breath. Every twitch of the dog's ears, every paw placement, every glance at the man could mean the difference between hope and heartbreak. The man gently coaxed the dog to his feet. "Come on, buddy, let's walk just a little. I want to show you I'm here." The dog hesitated, muscles coiled, then slowly followed, paws clicking lightly against the tile. His gaze flicked frequently to the man's face, ears upright, tail low but wagging in measured, cautious rhythm. He had survived abandonment, he had endured loneliness. He would not give himself fully, not until every movement proved that this time the promise was real. As they walked, a commotion erupted. A family of tourists accidentally stepped too close, snapping pictures, excited to see the famed Gate C-17 dog. The dog froze instantly, tail stiff, body rigid. His trust had not yet extended beyond the man. The man paused, arms open in reassurance. "It's okay, buddy, I'm right here," he whispered. The dog slowly relaxed, leaning slightly into his chest, allowing a tentative nuzzle. The small moment felt monumental. Loyalty had been tested, and he was beginning to measure it again. The man and dog reached a quiet corner near the check-in area, where volunteers had set up a small play space. Toys, blankets, and food were laid out, but the dog paid them little attention. Instead, he circled once, sniffed the ground, then returned to the man, chest pressed against his legs. The man's voice was steady but soft. "I'm not going anywhere, I promise." And the dog's eyes, shimmering with both wariness and recognition, held his gaze. For a heartbeat, the world shrank to two souls, each evaluating the other, testing the strength of this renewed bond. But even in this seemingly serene moment, tension lingered. The dog's loyalty had been challenged. He had endured days of neglect and abandonment. Would he forgive fully, or would fear linger in quiet corners, pulling him back to vigilance? The man understood the stakes. Every gesture, every step, every word mattered. He could not falter. He could not repeat past mistakes. And as the camera lenses clicked, and the live streams hummed with millions watching, the gravity of the moment pressed down like the weight of a storm about to break. Then came a subtle test, almost incidental but charged with emotional power. A volunteer gently placed a plate of food a few feet away from the dog. Normally, any animal might approach instinctively, hunger overpowering caution. But this dog hesitated, eyes flicking to the plate, then immediately returning to the man. He sniffed once, tail twitching, then stepped back, nudging the man's leg instead. The volunteers gasped softly. Loyalty, it seemed, could not be bought with food. It could only be earned through presence, reliability, and time. The man knelt, stroking the dog's head, voice steady. "You don't have to eat yet. You'll get everything you need, but only if you trust me. And I'll earn that trust every day, buddy, I swear." The dog leaned slightly into his chest, tail flicking faintly, paws shifting cautiously. It was the first sign that trust, fragile and delicate, had begun to rebuild. Across the terminal, onlookers whispered in awe. Some wiped tears from their eyes, commenting online, "He's not just waiting, he's testing him. This is incredible." Loyalty beyond measure, true devotion. Millions watched, captivated by the tension, the delicate balance between hope and betrayal, devotion and fear. It was no longer just a reunion, it was a test of endurance, a demonstration of the profound depth of the bond between human and dog. Hours passed. Volunteers encouraged small exercises, Walking short distances, brief leash exercises, gentle encouragement to explore the area around the terminal. Each time the dog hesitated, checking the man's face, gauging his reactions, measuring his consistency. And each time the man met his gaze with reassurance, soft words, and calm gestures. Slowly, the dog's tail began to wag more freely. Slowly, he took tentative steps away from the man and then returned, chest pressed against him, eyes shining with cautious joy. The suspense peaked when an announcement echoed across the terminal. Flight 402, final boarding call, gate C-17. The dog froze instantly, tail stiff, ears forward. For a split second the past and present collided. The memory of abandonment at this very gate surged, claws of fear gripping his heart. But the man knelt, voice gentle but firm. "It's okay, buddy, I'm here, I'm not leaving." The dog's muscles relaxed slightly, tail flicking tentatively. He had faced the memory of betrayal and found reassurance. He was beginning to trust fully again. Volunteers exchanged glances, knowing they were witnessing a rare and extraordinary moment. This was not simply a reunion. It was a demonstration of resilience, loyalty, and the profound power of forgiveness. The dog had endured abandonment, hunger, and fear, yet he was giving his trust anew, carefully, cautiously, but sincerely. Finally, as evening light shifted to golden dusk, the dog leaned fully into the man, resting his head on his knee, tail wagging with cautious exuberance. The test had passed, at least for now. Trust had been rebuilt, step by step, gesture by gesture, word by word. The audience online erupted in applause, comments flooding in. "This is the purest thing I've ever seen. Loyalty rewarded at last. I can't handle the emotion in this story." And yet the story was far from over. Suspense lingered, subtle and persistent. Would the man honor his promise beyond this moment? Could the bond withstand the realities of life beyond the terminal, beyond cameras, beyond social media attention? Could this loyalty endure not just for hours, but for years? The dog's gaze remained steady, alert, and expectant, a silent question lingering in the air. As night fell and the terminal lights dimmed, the man and dog sat together chest to chest, tail brushing the floor. Cameras and phones captured every second, millions of viewers glued to the unfolding drama. The dog had passed the first test, trust rebuilt in the crucible of abandonment. But the final test, the real, enduring test of life together, had only just begun. And in that quiet moment, the brown and white dog looked up at the man, ears twitching, eyes bright, tail flicking softly. Loyalty had endured. Devotion had triumphed. Hope had been rewarded, but the future, still uncertain, held its own suspense. How far would this bond reach? Could the promises made in the terminal be kept forever? For now, one thing was certain. The dog had waited, he had forgiven, and he had chosen to trust again. But the ultimate test of loyalty and devotion was yet to come. The airport was quiet in the early morning hours, a soft haze of sunlight streaming through the windows, catching in the polished tiles. The brown and white dog sat calmly beside the man, tail brushing gently against his leg, ears alert but relaxed, eyes bright and trusting. Days of abandonment, hours of vigil at the airport, and the trials of the shelter had forged him into something extraordinary, a creature defined by patience, loyalty, and unwavering devotion. Now he was poised at the precipice of a new chapter. The man knelt beside him, voice soft, eyes full of remorse and determination. "I promise, buddy, I'll never leave you again, no matter what, ever." The dog pressed closer, chest to chest, nuzzling gently, tail wagging with a confidence born of cautious trust. For the first time in what felt like forever, the man felt the weight of his own actions, the guilt of abandonment, the relief of reunion, and the responsibility of loyalty reborn. Volunteers, airport staff, and a small media contingent watched silently. Live stream viewers were already glued to the unfolding scene, millions of hearts collectively pounding in anticipation. Cameras captured the tremor in the man's hands as he adjusted the dog's collar, the sheen in his eyes from tears he hadn't yet wiped away. Every gesture mattered. Every word mattered. The dog had been tested to extremes, and now it was the man's turn to prove himself worthy of the trust so fiercely earned. The first real test came as the dog was guided toward the jet bridge, the very corridor where he had waited for days. The scent of travelers, the echo of footsteps, and the soft hum of rolling luggage triggered a subtle tension in his body. His tail stiffened, ears flicking nervously, muscles coiled like springs. The man noticed instantly. "It's okay, buddy, just me. We're together now. I'm not leaving." Slowly, gently, he offered his hand, and the dog stepped forward, tentative at first. Then, with increasing confidence, paws clicking against the tiles, chest pressed close. Volunteers whispered, holding their breaths. Social media feeds exploded. "He's walking back to the gate. Look at his trust. Loyalty meets redemption in real time. I can't believe this is happening. My heart." The world watched, captivated by the subtle, electric tension of this delicate dance between trust and fear. When they reached the empty gate, the man dropped to one knee. "Buddy, do you forgive me?" His voice trembled, heavy with emotion. The dog paused, nostrils flaring, eyes scanning every contour of the man's face. And then slowly he pressed his head against the man's chest, tail wagging freely, paws nudging gently. Forgiveness had been given, not instantly but fully. Loyalty had endured. Devotion had been tested and triumphed. The man's hands shook as he held the dog close, whispering apologies over and over. "I should have never left you. I'll make it right. I swear I will, always." The dog, sensing the sincerity in his voice, relaxed completely, fur brushing against the man's arms, eyes soft and trusting. The bond, once fractured by fear and abandonment, had been restored through patience, presence, and unwavering commitment. Volunteers stepped back, giving them space, tears quietly running down cheeks. Staff exchanged glances, whispering softly about the extraordinary nature of the reunion. Cameras clicked, capturing every subtle movement, the tilt of the dog's head, the gentle nuzzle of his nose, the man's tears glinting in the morning sun. Social media feeds were flooded with comments. "I can't handle this." "He waited, he forgave, and now happiness." This is what true loyalty looks like. But the man's redemption required more than words. He had to prove, through action, that his promises would hold beyond the terminal, beyond the cameras, beyond the applause. The volunteers helped him prepare a plan, a stable home environment, daily care routines, and full responsibility for every aspect of the dog's life. It was not enough to reunite. He had to live up to the loyalty that had been tested so severely. The dog's world, too, was about to expand. The familiar sense of the terminal, the echo of footsteps, and the remnants of the airline's bustle had been his universe for days. Now, he would experience the quiet of a home, the safety of consistent care, and the joy of freedom beyond the confines of metal gates and tiled floors. Yet even as he explored cautiously, every glance returned to the man, chest pressed close, tail wagging in steady rhythm, a living testament to devotion and trust. The moment of final departure from the terminal arrived. The man and dog walked side by side toward the exit. Each step was deliberate, reinforcing the bond, rebuilding trust, and cementing the lessons learned in hardship. Volunteers waved quietly, the staff smiled softly, and cameras captured the triumphant, delicate dance of trust restored. The live stream surged with viewers, hearts collectively clenched, emotions raw and unfiltered. Outside, the winter sun glinted off the airport glass. Snowflakes danced in the light, settling on shoulders and the dog's fur. The man paused, brushing a lock of hair from his face, then looked down at his companion. "We're going home, buddy, forever." The dog looked up, ears flicking, tail wagging freely now, chest pressed against him. The trust, once fragile, was unshakable. The vigil was over, the test complete. But even in this moment of triumph, the subtle tension of life beyond the cameras remained. Would the man honor the bond for the rest of their lives? Could the loyalty and forgiveness withstand the ordinary challenges, the mundane routines, and the unpredictability of the world outside the terminal? For the dog, the test had been endured. For the man, it had only begun. And yet, as they stepped into the waiting car, the dog settled against the man's chest, eyes soft, ears relaxed, tail wagging gently. It was clear. For now, the bond had triumphed. Years of devotion, days of waiting, and moments of doubt had culminated in this one perfect, fragile moment of mutual recognition and trust. The car drove away from the airport, leaving behind the echoes of footsteps, cameras, and the hum of astonished observers. Inside, the dog rested his head against the man's arm, breathing slowly, tail brushing the seat, eyes occasionally glancing up in trust and quiet joy. The man whispered again, soft and steady, "I'll never leave you, I swear it." The dog, finally confident in the words and presence, nudged his hand, a gentle affirmation of loyalty and acceptance. For millions of viewers online, the story reached a cathartic peak. The airport dog had waited, the man had returned, and the bond had endured. Comments poured in, faith in humanity restored. This made me cry like nothing else. True loyalty rewarded. Yet the subtle tension remained. Life would have its challenges, but the foundation of trust had been rebuilt, stronger than ever. The man and dog arrived at their new home. Familiar scents, soft blankets, and the quiet hum of safety replaced the cold, tiled floors of the terminal. The dog explored cautiously, sniffing each corner, then returned immediately to the man's side. He had endured abandonment, hunger, and fear, but he had also endured hope, patience, and unwavering loyalty. Now he would live in a world where devotion was returned in full. As night fell, the dog curled at the foot of the man's bed, chest rising and falling with steady breaths, ears flicking at every sound of the house. The man sat beside him, hand resting gently on his back, whispering words of love and commitment. The vigil was over, the test complete, and yet the journey of loyalty and life together had only just begun. Outside, the world continued to turn, but inside, the quiet room radiated the profound, fragile power of devotion and forgiveness. The dog had waited for days, endured nights of uncertainty, and survived abandonment. And now, finally, loyalty had been rewarded. The man had returned, promises had been made, and trust had been restored, stronger than ever before. And though the story had reached its cinematic, emotional conclusion, the subtle suspense remained. Life would test them again, as it always does. But for this moment, this perfect, fragile, unrepeatable moment, they were together. The brown and white dog closed his eyes, chest against the man, tail flicking softly, ears relaxed. The man whispered once more, "Forever, buddy, forever." And for the first time since abandonment, the dog believed it completely. The world had watched, hearts clenched, tears streaming, and now, finally, the story of unwavering loyalty had a happy ending. A testament to patience, devotion, and the enduring power of trust between a dog and his human.